Hello, New Paltz. Welcome to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'm here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. talking movies, new reviews, recommendations, lists. I just love movies, and that's what I do here. On today's show, I'm going to review Scream 7, share my ranking of the Scream franchise, talk about some movie news, and close out the show with my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. I'll be right back, but first here's some movie music, starting with Back in Black by AC/DC from the Iron Man soundtrack. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Kicking off the show today, Scream 7 released in theaters last weekend. Directed by Kevin Williamson, when a new Ghostface killer emerges in the town where Sidney Prescott has built a new life, her darkest fears are realized as her daughter becomes the next target. This latest entry in the Scream franchise brings back Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, after not returning for Scream 6. The franchise had been passed on to Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega's Carpenter sister characters, but a whole series of behind-the-scenes drama has led to neither of them returning. The directors of the last 2 films couldn't return due to scheduling conflicts, but they went ahead with the film without them. The franchise returns to Sidney Prescott as the lead with her family. Courtney Cox is back as well, and unfortunately this is easily the worst film in the franchise to date in my opinion. So I got caught up with this franchise a few years ago when the 2022 film was coming out. I watched the original 4 films with the main trio of Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. I enjoy this franchise a lot. All the original films have something unique to offer, and you get invested in the characters. I think the 2022 film was really good at bringing in the original cast, passing the franchise down to the new characters, and making you care about their relationships, and poking fun at the idea of legacy sequels, but really making you care about the new and old cast, and balancing everything really well. It's not just nostalgia, it built a meaningful new cast that I think Scream 6 did a good job of continuing with, and not having Neve Campbell there, while the pay dispute is pretty disrespectful, I think the new cast made it work without her. But now they have left the franchise, Neve Campbell is back in the lead, and I think this movie adds very little to this franchise and is very dull compared to the past films. Starting with the opening, this one is easily the worst of the series. All the other films have had really clever openings that either gives you a surprise on what you'd expect, or if it does have a more traditional opening, it has great suspense and uses elements of the setting to build the danger and setup and details in the scene that ties in really smart ways. Here, it's a really boring idea for a setting of the opening that gets overly repetitive and uses the past of the franchise without adding anything new. The scene has one somewhat cool set piece that even then doesn't have very smart build-up around it. There's very little suspense and intensity getting there, and it goes on way too long as it brings in elements of other films without doing anything special with the kills or writing of the scene. As for some of the other kills, there's very few strong ones here. One really stands out, the rest feel very repetitive and don't do enough different to add new layers or suspense. All the other films have some really cool set pieces and settings of each sequence that tie in smart writing to build them out and make you feel the fear from different places and how Ghostface makes his attacks in each scene. This movie has that one really good scene that sticks to that. The rest are especially repetitive and dull. Every attack feels like something another movie has done better. There's characters just running around in the streets and creeping through hallways and rooms where Ghostface might pop out. Other movies definitely had some of these moments and could get a little repetitive, but they also had plenty of really unique and smart uses of locations and plot elements that these kills are greatly lacking in. This is the movie where Ghostface's attacks and the ways characters try to detect and avoid him are the most plain and basic, and that is a huge drawback for this movie that made each scene so much less exciting. There's so many sequences in past films where you see the writing come together to make the character's situation feel so different and tense in each scene as they are attacked by Ghostface, and here they all start to blend together. From there you get into the story, we get the return of Sidney and seeing her with her family. Now Sidney is a great character that I think helps make the original films more engaging beyond the horror. Following this character dealing with trauma of her past and being targeted and further tormented by these killings and having to deal with all this while going through different parts of her life, along with the bonds she forms with Dewey and Gale and how these characters have been through so much together and look out for each other, I think the characters do provide an emotional core. So now at this point in Sidney's life, she has a family, she's a mother, and her daughter plays a main role here, played by Isabel May. I think taking Sidney to this role that we've never seen her in before, as she's been attacked all these years by different Ghostface killers, and has had to keep herself alive, and of course been in it with Dewey and Gale, and some of the other characters over the years. but now she has a child that she has to protect in this attack, and it's a role that gives Sydney a new level of fear that Neve Campbell plays really well. The protectiveness she shows in the intensity and anger of someone not just messing with her, but with her family, and how she's extremely dedicated to keeping them safe, is interesting for the character. Now, with the entire family dynamic, you have Joel McHale playing Sydney's husband. There's not super strong development on these relationships. It definitely could have leaned into this entire family relationship more as one of the unique points of this movie in the franchise, and some of the emotional moments and times where you need to be really engaged in the characters can fall a little short because of some lack of development there, although the mother and daughter dynamic definitely has some strong moments. As for more of the side characters of this movie, you get Courtney Cox returning again as Gale. It's nice to see Sydney and Gale coming together again, and seeing how their bond has grown over the years, and seeing them work together to take down another Ghostface has its strong moments. But Gale's role here definitely feels the most forced of her roles so far. Isabel May as Sydney's daughter is solid here, but definitely not as interesting or engaging of a character as some of the original characters, or even of the last two movies with the new cast. With that new cast, you get the return of Chad and Mindy from those last two films. I enjoy their characters, but their inclusion here feels extremely forced. I guess they wanted some more recent returning characters that can round out the cast a little more, but where they're at in this movie comes a little out of nowhere, and their roles are not as meaningful when you remove them from that group dynamic of the cast of the last two films that made them much more engaging characters. And then with a Scream movie, you have a group of characters that are the suspects, that you wonder who is Ghostface and who could be doing all this, and this is probably the worst group we've seen in a Scream film so far. A lot of the other films had some of the side characters that had some personality, and you remember them. Even the ones that don't end up being a killer have personality in their writing and performance. Here, it's hard to think of a really strong scene with any of these characters. They all kind of blend together, and when you do get the reveal of who the killer is, it's some of the most uninteresting characters and motivations we've gotten so far. Some of the other movies have sillier reveals, but this one had nothing to it, and the explanation and monologue and how they tie to Sydney had nothing clever to it. And I think at this point in the franchise, the ways they keep going back to this idea of Sydney's past, and this idea that it all goes back to the beginning, and she can't escape her past, is really old. We're 7 movies in, we've had a legacy sequel that introduces a new cast, a sequel to that film with the new cast, and now the 7th film goes back to Sydney, and this movie has very little to offer as far as these meta ideas of poking fun at the genre. This franchise has done sequels, third films in a trilogy, legacy sequels, and this time it just feels like another Ghostface murder spree, with no clever commentary or that classic humor of the series. As Ghostface is back, you get another investigation plot of the characters trying to track down the killer, follow their pattern of their murders, trying to predict what they're going to do next. The investigation element here really didn't work. I think part of it is not having that strong horror commentary that helped move some of the investigations of the past films. Tying in the in-universe movies with the killer's plots made for some more interesting investigations. Here, the characters' methods of tracking the killer down don't make much sense, and some of the clues they look into and what mysteries the movie presents are, without spoiling anything, some of the dumbest moments we've ever seen from this franchise. There's this mystery involving some prominent history of the franchise and incorporating some modern technology that starts very ridiculous, continues to be really dumb and desperate as the story goes along, and has moments later on that are just bad and being one of the worst killer tactics we've ever seen, and feels like a way to try to tie in the past of the franchise in a heartless and lazy way. Watching some of where this goes in the end, and how much this movie loses so much of the fun writing and spoof elements, the memorable and meaningful character relationships, it's sad to see how dull one of these movies is. You fire Melissa Barrera, you go on without the directors, you lose Jenna Ortega with all this behind-the-scenes drama, and you lose your current heart of the franchise and a really strong new cast and group dynamic, and then you bring back Neve Campbell and throw together this nonsense story with horrible ideas, boring side characters, and nothing new to offer to this series. Watching this movie was really disheartening. The Carpenter sisters could have been strong leads carrying this franchise further, and ending Sidney Prescott's time with the franchise, with where we last saw her in the 5th film, could have worked. If they do an 8th film, I really don't know where it goes. You don't have the Carpenter sisters. What more can you do with another chapter with Sidney? How many times can this all go back to the beginning? This latest film and Ghostface Attack is decisively the worst Scream film so far. Neve Campbell, Isabel May, Courtney Cox, and some of the cast are solid. There's some okay kills, but there's also the worst writing and commentary of the franchise, with some ridiculous mystery elements, and this feels so out of life compared to every other film in the franchise. I give Scream 7 a 44 out of 100. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with This Is Burke by John Powell from the How to Train Your Dragon score. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Next up today, I'm going to share with you my ranking of the 7 movies in the Scream franchise. I enjoy most of these movies. The franchise has gone through years without movies and come back with strong entries. I enjoy Ghostface as the killer, and the franchise has created some really engaging lead characters over the years. Let's get into this ranking. I will spoil things here and there. At number 7, I have Scream 7, the latest entry in the series. It was sad watching this in theaters and seeing how much worse this is than any other movie in the series. This franchise was going really strong up to this point, not having a bad movie in my opinion, and this movie declined things very sharply. You have the return of Neve Campbell as Sydney with her family. There's some emotions there, there's one really clever kill. The rest of this movie has extremely boring and shallow characters, forced conclusions of some returning characters, and some really dumb writing with its mysteries and plot elements. The mystery and reveal of Ghostface and the opening of the film are the franchise's worst. The horror commentary is empty, and some of these ideas feel so played out. It's a real shame this franchise has reached this point. This is a really bland movie with some terrible ideas. At number 6, I have Scream 3. This was for a while what I considered to be the worst movie in the franchise, but I enjoy a lot of this movie still. You get the Hollywood setting and having the Ghostface killings start taking place around the in-universe Stab franchise that has a movie in production that switches things up a little bit. You get a lot of Dewey and Gale teaming up on the investigation, and then eventually seeing the main trio come together again. There's a lot of fun stuff here. The opening with Cotton Weary isn't my favorite opening of the series, but it has a really good feeling of intensity as he's racing back to try to save his girlfriend and the desperation there. And just the personality of this series, the fact that you care about the characters and their relationships, some solid suspense scenes and exciting Ghostface attacks makes this an enjoyable Scream movie. I also like the finale of this one. I'm okay with the reveal, and I like the showdown itself and how he's taken down. I do have a number of problems with this movie though. The movie starts with Sydney isolated from the rest of the characters in hiding, and it goes back to her every once in a while as she's trying to keep herself and others safe by staying hidden. I think this is a fine way to start things with her, but it takes way too long to have her reunite with Gale and Dewey. It's about 45 minutes in when she joins the rest of the cast, and things get better when she does. I do enjoy the Gale and Dewey dynamic, but having all 3 of them makes it even better, and makes the story more engaging. Another big plot element of this movie is this Hollywood investigation into Sydney's mother that isn't very interesting. I like the element of Sydney dealing with the trauma of losing her mother and her ending up learning more about her past, but the investigation scenes and the clues they follow are one of the weakest investigation plots of the franchise. It's a lot of people looking at pictures and documents, and the kills also slow down a lot at certain points. There's also some of the actor characters who are playing the characters in the Stab movies that got pretty annoying for me. There's some humor with them it goes for, mainly the actress playing Gale having this rivalry with the real Gale that goes on for a while that I never found it that funny. And the commentary on movies, with it being about third movies and trilogies, was a little weaker than the first 2 films, and even some of the next films in the series, it doesn't tie in as naturally. Overall, Scream 3 has some problems, but also the really strong cast dynamic, some tense moments and clever kills. There's definitely better movies in the series, but this one is still good. At number 5, I have Scream 4. This one returns to Woodsboro and reunites the cast after 11 years between movies. Sydney, Gale, and Dewey are older now, and the movie does a good job at showing them at this different point in their lives. Gale and Dewey are married, Sydney has written a book, and having the characters come back together and seeing this different point in their lives was nice to see. This is such a great trio of characters. These movies do a great job at getting you invested in them and seeing how they grow closer going through all this together. As another Ghostface attack occurs, there's a new group of teenage characters that come into play in this story, along with the main trio returning. The new group of teenagers, including Sydney's cousin and her friends, aren't very interesting characters, and a few of them get really annoying with the high school humor, like the guy that's live streaming everything. You still get a lot of the main trio and have their roles in the story, but the new characters are pretty lackluster. This is a decent Scream movie. It doesn't have the most interesting or unique kills. This is the movie in the franchise I find the most forgettable and doesn't stand out as much. I think the opening of this one is one of the most clever of the series and does a really cool idea with the commenting on horror movies in the horror movie. It's really fun and unpredictable. I also really like the final showdown and where it goes and switches up the formula a little bit. There's still the classic monologue and reveal, but the way the final kill goes down and how the characters figure things out was a fun way to switch things up. A lot of the horror commentary of this one is how this kind of remake flips the rules of the original, and I think that commentary isn't very strong in this one and isn't as clever. The idea of flipping the rules is pretty underdeveloped, but I think switching things up a lot in the finale worked really well to make it more memorable among the finales. Scream 4 has a couple memorable elements I really enjoyed. I like seeing the characters later in life, but the new characters are very lackluster and annoying, and the kills in the middle don't impress as much. This one falls into the background for me a little when I think about the franchise, but it's solid. At number 4, I have Scream 6. The sequel to the 2022 Legacy sequel that continues the story of the new cast starring Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as the Carpenter sisters. This one takes the series to New York City as the characters move here for college. You also get the survivors from the last film, Chad and Mindy, returning. This group dynamic and the new cast was a really strong dynamic of these two movies. You get that bond of these characters surviving together and trying to keep each other safe. You have the sister dynamic and the history of their relationship and this past of Ghostface that they're trying to work through. I think the new cast is fun and likable. I was invested in them totally independent of the original trio. You do get Gail in this one, but her role works well here in her investigator role, and how she works with the rest of the new cast works really well. The sequence at her apartment where she gets attacked by Ghostface is really brutal and intense. This movie has a lot of really clever and intense scenes. The sequence with the ladder bridge going between the buildings is so well done. You have the height element as Ghostface is right on the character's heels. The sequence on the subway with a bunch of people dressed up as Ghostface, you don't know who the real one is, the lights keep going out. That one builds the tension so well as well. The opening also does something really different that really throws you off that I think was really well done. The mystery and Ghostface reveal here definitely feel a little played out at this point. The incorporation of past Ghostface killers and tying in the history there felt pretty forced and didn't tie into the killer's motivation in a very interesting way. It feels more like fan service. And there's also some really insane ways that characters survive at the end, despite taking some awful looking blows from Ghostface. If they weren't a main character, they would easily be dead. Some past films have definitely done that, but there's some moments here that are really crazy and feel like the character just needed to survive because they're a main character. This movie continues the new cast well. It has some great sequences, but there's some repetitive elements and lazy writing. It's a good Scream movie, but it has some drawbacks. At number 3, I have Scream 2022, the fifth film. This was sort of a reboot to the franchise with Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega in the leads with a new cast. I think this movie is really good. It's a legacy sequel, and the horror commentary is some of the best here, as it has fun with the idea of bringing the series back, with the old characters playing supporting roles. But it moves things to the new cast really well. It builds this history and complex relationship with the sisters that makes them genuinely interesting characters that have ties to the original film and history of the franchise, but they have a different struggle of dealing with their family history and how they're brought into the Ghostface attacks. It's a smart way to do it that connects things a little, but still has meaningful character relationships. With the old characters, you see them even later in life, where their relationships have gone over the years. They give Dewey an interesting arc that shows the good nature of the character in a really emotional way. With the modern time of the film, with the internet now being a thing, with these fan bases having online forums and toxic fandom, the movie is able to comment on that as well. This movie is definitely sticking to the original film a lot and is aware of that, so it can feel very familiar at points, but I also think there's plenty of great sequences and kills here that don't copy kills of the past films. The hospital sequence is so intense, the scene with the sheriff and her son is haunting. It has tremendous suspense with great direction that fits in the franchise, but offers a lot new as well. The violence here is also so brutal. It's sometimes even more graphic and raw than the past films, but it's not excessive. It balances the terror and the more fun elements of the franchise really well. The movie has a lot original to offer. There are definitely times where it sticks a little too close to the original for me, a few moments that feel a little too similar. But overall, I think this was a strong way to bring this franchise back. You have the new characters, the legacy characters have meaningful roles here. There's fun commentary on legacy sequels and modern franchises. There's a bunch of awesome kills here and intense Ghostface attacks. This was the first Scream movie I saw in theaters, the first that I first saw after watching the original films, and it was a really cool way to bring this back. At number 2, I have Scream 2, the first of the sequels that follows the surviving characters of the original film to college. I think this is a great second film to the original. You see the characters at the next point in their life after the first Ghostface attacks. Sydney's at college, has new friends and a boyfriend, and then Ghostface attacks start happening again. Dewey, Gail, and Randy return to help catch the new killer. You get the continuation of Gail and Dewey's relationship, seeing them grow closer. Randy provides some more commentary on films, this time with sequels. The commentary isn't as classic as his rules from the first film, but I did like the incorporation of the sequel idea into the killer's methods and the investigation. It's an interesting trail for the characters to follow. I also like the bits of Randy and Timothy Olyphant's character debating about movie sequels. That's a fun bit. The kills here are some of my favorite in the franchise. The opening at the movie theater is such a fun idea. There's a ton of people in ghost face masks around. The characters are already on edge a little because of the movie. It's really tense. The sorority house kill is solid. The car sequence where the characters have to climb over Ghostface, who may or may not be unconscious. Will he wake up once you're over him? That sequence is so masterfully stressful. The theater sequence with all the performers and creepy masks, as Sidney keeps seeing one of them as Ghostface, is so chaotic and thrilling. The camera work and choreography of that is tremendous. When Gale and Dewey are in the theater room and the camera is following Gale, moving behind these walls trying to avoid Ghostface, the blocking and camera work of that is so dynamic. The phone call scene with the van kill and the build up there. I honestly think this movie has the best collection of kills and sequences of all these movies. In the end, I don't think the final reveal of the killers is as strong as the original. They're two of the more forgettable reveals that don't tie in as well, but I love the change of setting, developing the characters a little later in life and their relationships, some decent commentary on horror sequels, some of my favorite kills of the franchise. This one is very close to the original for me. It's awesome. My favorite Scream movie is the original Scream. This is a tremendous horror film that starts off so well. The opening of this movie is iconic, with the phone call, what's your favorite scary movie, the popcorn burning, it's so tense right away, the voice of Ghostface from Roger Jackson is so menacing. It has fun with the tropes of the horror genre, but it's so brutal and dark as well. The killing of Drew Barrymore's character has haunting imagery that is such a terrifying way to kick things off. Then you get introduced to Sidney Prescott, meet her group of friends that make up the suspect group. Dewey and Gale get involved as well. You have Dewey as the good-natured man who is looking out for Sidney and trying to catch this killer. There's Gale that's always chasing these stories and trying to get ahead, but there's so much goodness and more depth to the character as well. The movie builds these dynamics with the characters, learning about Sidney's past and what she's going through, and seeing the start of Gale and Dewey's relationship and the interesting bond they have. You get invested in all this. You have the spoofing of the genre with Randy giving his rules on how to survive these movies. Don't say you'll be right back. Some classic stuff like him telling the characters to turn around in the movie he's watching while he's being crept up on by Ghostface. The kills here are really clever and messed up. The garage door kill, this whole attack at the house at the end. I forgot Henry Winkler plays the principal here. He's got a tense sequence as well. The finale is the best of the series. The reveal is really well done. It's dark and menacing. You're trying to figure everything out. You never know who you can trust. The performances are so wild but fit so well. This movie has the fun and horror. It killed it with the balance. It's super messed up and violent, but there's human characters as well. The characters have so much personality and you get invested in the protagonists. Ghostface is menacing, the look is iconic. This movie is just the classic. The final showdown at Stu's house, the first wave of killings and the mystery going around Woodsboro. Getting introduced to these characters, this is one of my favorite horror movies. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Don't Stop Me Now by Queen from the Shaun of the Dead soundtrack. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Next up today, I'm going to talk about a little movie news. It appears that Martin Scorsese has begun shooting his next film in Prague a few days ago. The movie is titled What Happens at Night. The movie will be another collaboration between Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, a legendary duo that have been doing some incredible work together lately. The latest film from this duo, Killers of the Flower Moon, is a masterfully told, horrific true story with an incredible performance from DiCaprio. A synopsis from this next film reads, a married American couple visits a snowy European town to adopt. At their eerie hotel, they meet odd characters. Reality blurs as they pursue the baby and question their lives. It's based off a novel by the same name by Peter Cameron. The movie will also star Jennifer Lawrence, Mads Mikkelsen, Jared Harris, and Patricia Clarkson. There's been reports of a few different Scorsese movies being his next film over the months. There was a Frank Sinatra biopic that seems to have been indefinitely delayed, a Jesus movie, a movie starring Dwayne Johnson, but this seems to be his next film. I'm really not familiar with this story. That brief summary isn't the selling point with me though. It's not something that initially sounds super grabbing to me, but Martin Scorsese is one of the greatest directors of all time. Him and DiCaprio working together has led to some incredible movies. I think Jennifer Lawrence is great as well. Mads Mikkelsen is an incredible name to have there as well. I'm really excited to see this. It sounds really mysterious, and the eerie sound of it has me interested to see what he does with this. It's always exciting to hear about all-time great directors working on their next projects. I love so many of Scorsese's movies, and What Happens at Night is now in production. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Southern Nights by Glenn Campbell from the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 soundtrack. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Closing out the show today, I'm going to give you my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. Every week I like to take 3 movies I like to recommend and give a little recommendation on them here. My first throwback recommendation for this week is 1997's Liar Liar. Directed by Tom Shadyac, forced by his son's birthday wish, fast-talking attorney and habitual liar Fletcher Reed, played by Jim Carrey, must tell the truth for the next 24 hours. This is a great Jim Carrey comedy. I really enjoyed Dumb and Dumber, but this one I find even funnier and enjoy Jim Carrey's humor so much in this. It's a great concept for a comedy that is a perfect match for Jim Carrey and the physical humor he's able to do with his body and facial reactions. You have this idea of a guy who is going through his day and has to tell the truth in every situation. He can't say something he knows to be false, and you have to sell the involuntary nature of saying it like it's spilling out of your mouth and you're failing to stop it, and then being immediately in shock of the truth you just told against your will and looking terrified. It's a use of facial reactions and the way he says these things that Jim Carrey nailed here. It's not just these crazy things he says and these thoughts he has coming out and the shock of that. It's seeing his reaction and how he tries to work his way out of these situations that really makes the comedy in this movie work so well. Having him be a sleazy lawyer is also a great element to add and works in the idea of how much lying is part of this guy's everyday life, not just at his career, but with his family as well. What if that ability was removed? How would he work these cases out? And how would being forced to tell the truth for a day change him? It's a concept that leads to a very unique type of courtroom movie at times, with how he has to operate in these cases, and it also provides a nice emotional family arc that makes it pretty sweet as well. This is a great comedy. If you like Jim Carrey's comedies and haven't seen this one, give it a watch. My second throwback recommendation for this week is 1998's Armageddon. Directed by Michael Bay, when an asteroid threatens to collide with Earth, NASA honcho Dan Truman determines the only way to stop it is to drill into its surface and detonate a nuclear bomb. This leads him to renowned driller Harry Stamper, played by Bruce Willis, who agrees to helm the dangerous space mission provided he can bring along his own hotshot crew. Among them is the cocksure AJ, played by Ben Affleck, who Harry thinks isn't good enough for his daughter, played by Liv Tyler, until the mission proves otherwise. This movie has such a great cast: Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Steve Buscemi, and more. This is one of those concepts for an action movie that gets made fun of a lot, for a good reason, honestly. Why don't they teach astronauts how to drill instead of the other way around? This movie is really cheesy and silly, but Michael Bay can be a really fun director, and that stands true with this movie. You have some strong space mission elements of the characters' training, learning how to use the equipment and survive space, but it's being taught to a bunch of guys with nothing close to the experience of going to space. They have to learn it very quickly so they can blow up this asteroid in time. You have the element of the control room and seeing developments in the mission, parts of the plan going well, other changes they have to make, the personalities of the characters coming into play. It also goes for some emotional beats that hit harder than you'd expect. Bruce Willis in the lead is such a fun and exciting performance, and Michael Bay, while the humor can get a bit annoying and really silly, really is having fun with this idea, and it makes it entertaining. This is one of those movies that if you're in the mood for a light watch, just something fun and silly with action and suspense and end-of-the-world stakes, a fun cast of characters that come into this space world in silly ways and get a bit of emotion, this one is enjoyable in my opinion. The commentary with Ben Affleck is also really funny. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but there's a clip where he's talking about the concept of the movie that's really funny. It really doesn't make sense, but that's not really what matters here. My third throwback recommendation for this week is 2011's The Raid. Directed by Gareth Evans, a SWAT team becomes trapped in a tenement run by a ruthless mobster and his army of killers and thugs. This movie stars Iko Uwais in the lead role as this guy that goes into this crime-filled building. This movie has a very plain story with very thin characters, but that is not the draw of this movie. That concept sets the movie up to showcase its action. You get multiple floors of criminals to fight, tons of blades, guns, weapons, other items and environments that can be used as weapons, and the action here is what gets to really be showcased, and it is incredible. It's some of the greatest fight choreography and stunt performance I've ever seen. The speed and precision of everything, the effectiveness of the violence, every blow looks so painful and intense. How it moves through this building and shows the insane athletic ability of the performers and how these sequences are choreographed and executed. It's such tremendous action. Iko Uwais, Yayan Ruhian, Joe Taslim, and all the stunt performers are excellent here. The ability in these martial arts and the physical strength and agility here is so impressive and exciting to watch in every scene. Once the action starts and you're in the midst of this dangerous building, you feel the griminess of this place. There's threats around every corner, and it's such a bleak place for this amazing action to go down. There's also a sequel, The Raid 2, also directed by Gareth Evans, that follows Uwais' character on a better story than the first. There's more characters and depth to it, there's a little more to get engaged with, and the action is just as good if not better. You have more fighters, the fights feel even more dangerous, they take place in more environments. These movies have such a great incorporation of the stunt performing, the choreography, Gareth Evans' direction, a variety of weapons, dangerous environments. They are masterful action movies that, although they don't have the strongest stories, if you're a fan of action movies, these are awesome. So this week, if you want a comedy with a great idea for a Jim Carrey movie, watch Liar Liar. If you want a ridiculous but entertaining action sci-fi movie with a great cast, watch Armageddon. And if you want some incredible action and fights, watch the Raid films. I'll be right back to close out the show, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Evacuation by Trevor Rabin from the Armageddon score. That's going to be it for me this week on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'll be back next week with a review of the new Pixar film Hoppers and some more movie talk. You can listen to past episodes of the show on YouTube, and be sure to follow my Instagram for updates and more content. Both of those are Not Quite My Tempo with Chris. New episodes will be up on YouTube after they air on WFNP Rosendale, so this episode will be up very shortly, and I will be back next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Have a good week.